Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Egberto Will is your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We're going to have a great show for you today. Lost a lot of you yesterday. Why? Because I had to have the show 1 hour later because I was doing an interview with Univision in Spanish to be played on Channel 45 on Saturday, tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Anyhow, welcome aboard Bridge MCP. Hola, hola, the wave. Michael Rudnin, how'd your show go yesterday? Well, because my show was missing two of our stars, specifically Miguel Rudnin, Michael Rudnin, and Bridge MCP, it wasn't as good as it should have been. But you guys are here today. Let's see, like how the defense team is blaming the Dem managers on selective video, then went and did the same. But the thing about it is, when you're doing videos, you want to tell your message. That's what I do. I go ahead and when I cut these videos, I am taking a portion of the video as long as I'm not taking it out of context. That's the thing. That's what's important. When you're doing videos and you're using video clips, what you don't want to do is change the context of the meaning that you're trying to portray to your audience. Otherwise, you're lying. What I try to do when I'm doing the videos is look at the entire segment, see the gist of the segment, and take out what I think the people would want to hear based on not having to listen to the whole 5-minute segment. I may take out 2 minutes of it and make sure that it's representative. Or if it's in different segments, I'll make sure that it tells the story as they are saying, but that I can further apply some narrative to. Sometimes negative, sometimes positive. It all depends. But the thing about it is not out of context. And what they said about the defense team and Bridge MCP was not out of context. What the clips that the defense team used, they were definitely not out of context. They'll try to say, well, why didn't you use the other fight where he meant a logical fight, not a physical fight? Because that's not the part that they were trying to tell. We know that Donald Trump wanted to overthrow the government by all means necessary. If they could have done it in a peaceful way, that I remember let me give you some numbers, some things here. As this insurrection was going on, they were making calls to people in the Senate, and they were asking people in the Senate, hey, can you hold back a little bit because we're wanting to come up with more evidence. What they mean is they wanted to come up with cooked data. Okay, so they were asking that, and when that didn't occur, the mob was marching in. The mob was running after, breaking down doors, breaking windows. One of them got killed by trying to get in. So the truth of the matter is Donald Trump knew exactly what he does. And then the past is prologue. Donald Trump is the same guy who likes to talk law and order, but tells somebody at his rallies, crack their skulls open, I will pay the defense bill. Of course, you know Donald Trump will never pay a bill for anybody. But he said he would. Giving people the impetus to go out there and do what they want to do. But anyway, let's get busy with the show. We got a good show for you today. Let's go ahead and get busy with the show. Title of the show, Hoy, para el título del programa hoy. Title of the show today, here you go, is Impeachment Shenanigans. Houston Peace and Justice Center President Jeff Reese speaks. Okay, so Houston Peace and Justice Center President Jeff Speak visited with me. We discussed the Peace and Justice Center, Houston Peace and Justice Center, and a few other things. This guy is an ex-cop, and just for my audience, let me tell you, he's one of the good ones. All right, anyhow, let's go ahead and get busy. I'm going to play a couple of tapes that I played yesterday because I need to make sure this gets exposure. First of all, let's go ahead and get Denver Riggleman, who is trying to make the attempt. He wants Donald Trump convicted. And he's saying that what the defense is doing is horrendous. And then he says the ones that are being conservative here are those progressive judges. Let's go ahead and play that, and then we'll take it on the other side. All I can say is, wow, I just had a say what moment listening to a former congressman tell a story, reinvent a party, reinvent the definitions. I want you to check this out, and then let's take it on the other side.
I just want to read you some of the reactions from some senators yesterday after watching the footage. Mike Rounds have continued to say that it is not constitutional to impeach and convict a former president. Ted Cruz, the result of this trial is preordained. Rick Scott, he's never said when somebody should break in. He actually said that people should do this peacefully. And then Roy Blunt, you have a summer where people all over the country were doing similar kinds of things. Is that the rationale that will be the dominant strain? And is this proof that many minds probably weren't changed?
Yeah, so reflect on their voters, Chuck. Yeah, I heard some of this, and I can't imagine after what we saw in the Capitol that we've gone to quibbling. We're going to quibble on this type of stuff. We have something much bigger happening here, and we're talking about if our boots are shiny enough. That's sort of ridiculous. But I feel like it's almost like Jamie and Joe and the impeachment managers are actually making a case for conservatism. And let me explain this way. It seems like they're the ones that are saying we should conserve the republic. We should conserve the Western sort of institutions, really civilization, that we should conserve the constitutional law that we live under, that we should conserve the peaceful transfer of power. I've never seen anything like it. If you're saying you're a Republican, a constitutional Republican, a constitutional conservative, the argument from Jamie, from Joe, from the impeachment managers, all of that looks like to me like it's what a real Republican would say in protecting our institutions. I just find it amazing that you're looking at all this evidence and you're absolutely somehow still quibbling about whether it's constitutional when he's already been impeached. And I'll just say this last thing about listening to Donna. We had a minimum of 7 white nationalist groups that were involved in the siege. 7, a minimum. I'm appalled by this, but it's amazing to see the arguments by the impeachment managers.
Let's get this clear. Conservative? You know, that is a problem with many conservatives. They believe that somehow they're more Americans and somehow they want to maintain these structures that we have evolved towards over time. No, I'm sorry. He should be saying those are the progressive values. That is what we're fighting for. By the way, conservative under his parlance would mean starving people. Conservative under his parlance doesn't believe in Medicare for all and the policies that help maintain the structures that we have. If you get a degeneration in society, you lose your structures. And that is what their policies do. If you doubt it, you should take at the Public Policy and Health in the Trump era, a report by the Lancet that points out how destructive their policies have to be. The gall with which to say that the conservative argument is being put together by a whole bunch of progressives out of the Congress is appalling. But let's take this one step further. Any senator who saw that presentation, and by the way, a lot of that presentation they should have seen already over newscasts throughout the country. But any senator who saw that put together chronologically and does not have the heart to say, we need to convict this president so that any other president who attempts to do this, he or she knows that they will be penalized. It is saying that you don't support what your Constitution stands for, and it says that you don't support that which keeps this country alive. That which keeps this country alive. Anyway, I want to make another mention because you're going to hear this on the news a lot, and I want you to hear it in the right context. The defense went up there and they did a whole lot of false, what do you call that? False equivalencies, and they did a whole lot of lies. Let me tell you specifically the first one. They tried to imply that when the defense, when the prosecutors, when the managers, impeachment managers said, this is videos nobody else have seen before, the comeback from the defense was, why haven't anybody seen it before? They're trying to make it some sort of a gotcha moment. That means they want to use it for propaganda. What they failed to tell you is that all the video that was played right there on screen, the defense had it for weeks. Because of the agreement that they had to share it. So it's a lie that they went up there and said. They also try to give the equivalence to when the Democrats have been saying, we got to fight or be in the streets. That's the only way. I am for, we have to be in the streets. We remember our founding fathers were in the streets. Our founding fathers were using guerrilla tactics because they were being wronged by their government. Okay, let's clarify a few things here. Now, when you had people of color getting murdered by police officers, That is why Black Lives Matter came about. That is why I interviewed Collars, Janice Collars, when close to when she formed Black Lives Matter. You could look it up. What's her first name? Collars. I forgot her first name right now. Anyhow, just look it up on our website. Collars is spelled Collous. There was a reason for these protests. There was a police officer that killed a man in daylight. And it's been happening throughout the country. That's what the protest was about. It had a reason. But at no time was there an insurrection against the center of government, the capital of the United States. The only people that do that kind of stuff, destroy the capital, invade the privacy, put our government at risk, are these militia guys, like they did in Michigan, like they did at the Capitol. That is what they do. Because they are the ones. Projection is an interesting thing. Whenever you talk about, you're unpatriotic. The unpatriotic ones are those guys that like to think they're more American than anybody else. That is what's happening. So anyhow, when you listen to the news tonight, do not believe the fact that somehow these guys didn't get the tapes and all the video that you saw that the impeachment managers put on. That's not true. And secondly, do not fall for the false equivalency of Black Lives Matter and what the unpatriotic, what I like to call them, the unpatriotic, seditious insurrectionists did at the Capitol. They're far and completely different, my dear brothers and sisters. Okay, the next thing I want to do is to play a Republican who was the defense secretary a while back, and he just has a complete disdain for these senators that are weak and are not doing their job. Check this out. I'll take it on the other side. Many rank-and-file Republicans are starting to come out now to really hit the senators. It's time for you to do the right thing. It's a good thing, a bit late, because many of these guys, in as much as they've seen the light now, they were complicit in creating what Donald Trump was, in actually allowing Donald Trump to do what he did, because the reality is Donald Trump is but a representation of much of what the Republican Party has become. Well, former Republican Defense Secretary William Cohen, he probably gives the best, I don't want to call it an attack, but the best admonition on the senators, the Republican senators who may want to decide to acquit Donald Trump. Check this out, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Personal safety has entered their minds and maybe having an influence on how they're going to vote. You felt pressure like that. Talk about that political pressure.
There were threats made against me, my family. There were bomb threats. We had to evacuate the building that we were holding the hearing in. So the threats were there, and they continued even after that. But my wife and I were watching Saving Private Ryan the other night. We had seen it before, but we wanted to watch it again, to watch the men who stormed Omaha Beach, who climbed the hills with the Nazis firing down on them. These were men of the greatest generation. And I think about that because I have a friend who's 95 now who was part of the ones who landed. And all he could think about was defeating the Nazis and saving freedom. He fought again in Korea. And now when I hear that some members are afraid if they vote the truth, if they understand that this is what Donald Trump did, he attacked our democracy, and they're afraid, I want them to go back and think about the men and women after that who served us. I got a chance, both Janet and I got a chance to meet the Tuskegee Airmen, became friends with one in particular, Colonel Dryden. And he talked about how he had to fight against the Nazis during World War II and then come back and deal with the racism back here. These were men who had courage. And for members of Congress to say, gee, I'm not so sure, I know what the facts are. I know that Donald Trump was the fireman in chief. He's the chief marshal. Forget about all the arguments of whether he arranged it, whether he inspired them, when he watched. He was the fireman in chief, and he watched the fire burn. And while he sat back either eating chips or drinking some soft drink and took no action, That was an impeachable act, and any person in the Senate who doesn't recognize that as an impeachable act and votes not to convict, they don't deserve to have the word honorable next to their name. This is clearly a case where he violated his duty. He first tried to get the military to perhaps step in. He asked for President Putin to help him out. He asked for President Zelensky to help him out. He asked the Secretary of State of Georgia to help him out. Get me 11,780 votes. He asked the Vice President of the United States to help him out. And when they said no, he sends in his ragtag army as such, his Boogaloo boys, the Proud Boys. Who are the Proud Boys? Anything like the Doughboys of World War I? Anything like the Greatest Generation? No. So I think every member on the Hill knows what has happened, the failure of the president to take the action required to protect and defend members of Congress, his own vice president, Capitol Hill, the police. I didn't hear any of the Boogaloo boys or the Proud Boys say Blue Lives Matter. Where were the Blue Lives Matter signs? They were attacking them. They killed one and caused the death of others. So for members of Congress to say, gee, I'm not so sure I'll get taken to task back home. I might even be attacked. I'd say that's the burden you have, because the Constitution is worth defending, and every one of our predecessors was willing to climb those hills in Omaha and to hit the beaches while they were being attacked savagely. I think every Republican member looking at that evidence has really no alternative if they're going to abide by their conscience, the truth, which is laid out by Jamie Raskin brilliantly, powerfully, persuasively, patriotically. And they're going to say, well, the Constitution says, well, the scholars on the Constitution, the overwhelming majority say, no, you can and should do this. And so now they're going to hold up the Constitution as a fig leaf to hide their naked fear and cowardice and greed for the office. So they're either afraid or they're complicit. Either one, it marks them as being really ashamed, I think, to say that they're a member of the Senate and didn't vote to protect that document to which they swore allegiance to.
Donald Trump, we know, is a con man. But more importantly, what this insurrection also showed, this unpatriotic, seditious insurrection actually showed, is that he is also a mob boss. So when you have the Republican senators, any Republican senator who acquits Donald Trump, remember what he's doing. He's putting back out there on America the possibility of being led by a mob boss again. Absolutely so. There's no doubt about that. If he's acquitted, we've acquitted a mob boss, and the actions, God knows what else will come thereafter. The actions, God knows what will come thereafter, because, you know, the Proud Boys, they do believe, they are sure intent that El Presidente Trump is theirs. El Presidente Trump is theirs. Anyhow, before we go, I'm putting this one out here, and I'm trying to put this all over the place to try to let people understand. We are going to have to catch, I don't know if you guys were around for the Hillary Clinton, when she was running the Hillary Care, trying to get it together in the 90s. Harry and Louis came out, and they pretty much fooled everybody into believing it was bad news, and of course it lost. Came Obamacare. It was a little bit better with the way we framed it, but we still had a lot of issues. We had throwing grandma over the crest or hill or whatever, throwing having death panels. We have this machine that is always ready whenever there's progress for the middle class or the poor. Whenever it's ready, whenever it's time, they are ready to attack. I want to play, the new attack is on insulin. What they want to do is forego what President Biden has in store. But beforehand, let me welcome people. Bridge MCP, welcome aboard. Linda E, welcome aboard. Tank 2828, welcome aboard. Michael Rudden, welcome aboard. Para ver quién más está aquí. Let's see, I saw a whole lot more coming up on the top. Yep. Coming down. AVQ, welcome aboard. Lawrence Sims, welcome aboard. Norman Reynolds, welcome aboard. Missed you for a few days, my brother. Anyhow, let's go ahead and play this stuff on Biden. And what I want to ask you guys to do is I have it as a standalone blog as well that I think I should put in here. Share this stuff. What we have to do is when you get the big fallacies that are about to metastasize, we need to go ahead and put in the space everywhere, the truth as well, so that when people are searching Biden insulin, when I started doing Biden insulin, all the stuff that was coming up for Biden and insulin was about Biden increasing the price of insulin. We have to make sure and populate the space with truth, not only what they would like out of there. So this is a blog that I wrote for that. Let me put it on the screen right now, and it covers what I'm going to play right now. But we need you all to share these things to make sure that it gets populated out correctly. I'm putting the link inside of the thing. It's but you can go to Egberto Willies and find it and share it as well. But I'd love for you to share that in your emails, in your Twitter, in your everywhere to make people understand what's going on. Okay, let's go ahead and talk to Brother Biden right now, and then we'll take it on the other side. I think there's a constitutional flaw. We are going to have to modify what's the definition of free speech. Recently, we have all these memes, these short videos on YouTube, short videos on Twitter, where there are these people saying, oh my God, now that Biden is in power, he is causing, my insulin has just been increased. I'm now paying $300 a month. This other kid came out and said, I'm paying $2,000 a month. These guys are liars. They are liars, are more than likely paid actors to lie to you. And the problem about it is many people believe it. I want to show you two of these. It's just a clip of two of these because I think it is utterly dangerous.
Hi everybody, so I'm just having a little freak out in my car because I just found out that my f***ing diabetic supplies, like my insulin and my pump supplies, the things I need to live, are costing $2,000 a month. I'm 24. I only just got out of college before COVID hit and I am not making any good money.
Now they're blaming Biden.
2020, when Trump was president, our monthly payment for Hayden's insulin, and insulin is not a negotiable product. Last year under Trump, our insulin payment went to $60 a month for this box. You know how much I paid for this one box of insulin? I paid $328.
The lies that we hear on the internet, we have to really validate. Now, here is the fact check. The claim, President Joe Biden is reversing an executive order put in place by Donald Trump to reduce patient costs for insulin and epinephrine. By the way, the guy's been in office 3 weeks. These videos have been out for quite some time now. So it just shows you how the line occurs. The right wing are always on top of issues and they're always ready to go. And that's why we have to do our part. The National Association of Community Health Centers, among others, expressed support for the new administration move, saying the Trump rule would not have lowered the cost of insulin and EpiPens for most Americans. So they're lying. These are actors, or more than likely, these are actors that are there spilling lies. The right-wing machine is always here. This is what they did during Obamacare. This is what they did during all the policies that are there to be good for the middle class or the poor. They send out these actors to make believe, oh, you are in trouble, folks. That is why we need a true progressive independent media to counteract the crap that these guys come out with. And basically, that is what we have to counter. And that is what politics done right. We do a lot of interviews, bring a lot of new stuff to people. But that is one of our major goals as well, right? To populate the internet with information to go ahead and go against that truth. Go ahead and do things like Biden, insulin, and what you find is you find a whole lot of this crappy information coming out. Now, if you want to have more valid information on YouTube, etc., you have to have your videos out there to counteract this false data. You have to have those blogs out there that's being aspirated by the Google engines, the Hotmail, the Microsoft engines, all these search engines, so that you can be in the argument, so that you can be there to tell the truth, if you will. And that is what we do here. And that is why I ask you, those of you that are on YouTube right now, click join. Help us continue to provide this service, this very important service to all of us, to make sure and populate videos, internet, everywhere with truthful information to also counteract the bad information that you see out there. So if you're on YouTube, join the Posse. Join the PDR Posse, well named by Bridge MCP. Join the PDR Posse and become a member today. If you are not on YouTube right now, you can still become a member of the PDR Posse by going to the link that I have in there right now. That link says politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. Do that. Become a part of our YouTube, our PDR Posse. You can support us as well via Patreon. Go to politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. Patreon is spelled Patreon. Patreon. Why do I call it out? Because it's spelled different than patron. So it's politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. We also support or accept PayPal. PayPal is politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. politicsdoneright.com/PayPal. Our book, as it's worth it, how to talk to your right-wing relatives, friends, and neighbors. You can get it at Amazon, and this is a link to get it at Amazon. Please, you can also get it directly at our store, politicsdoneright.com/store, and I'm putting that up as well, politicsdoneright.com/store. What that does, if you buy it from our store, of course, you cut out the middleman. We make a little bit more moolah on it, which help us out even more. Folks, we do need your support, so we ask you so kindly to become a member by clicking that join button, or you can either give us a super chat too if you're so inclined to do so. But we need your support to continue doing what we're doing. For those of you who want to see our interaction with our folks, if one of our members said, hey, you need to have a cup that says, that talks about the PDR Posse and what we do. Then I said, well, my dear, if you really believe we should have one, if you design it, we'll get it done. And by gosh, Bridge MCP went ahead and designed the cup. And that's the cup design by Bridge MCP that you're seeing on the screen right now. Bridge designed that cup. And it's everything that we are about. Left, right, we the people, all of us talking together, being one big family. She did it. She designed it. We went ahead and built it. And one of the first people to purchase the cup was Norman Reynolds. And there it's Norman Reynolds with that serious investigative face drinking from the cup that was designed by another member, Bridge MCP. Why don't you guys do the same if you want to go ahead and get that cup as well? Here is the link to the cup from whence brother Norman Reynolds is drinking, and designed by Bridge MCP. There it is. There it is. And again, you can get it there. And if you don't want to get it at our store directly, you can also get it at Teesprings. And how do you get it at Teesprings? I'm going to show you how you can get it at Teesprings as well. So Bridge MCP's design is everywhere. Anyhow, we need to get back to the program. Thank you so kindly for having listened to my little piece where I ask you to support the show. Now let's go to our special guest, Jeff Reese, friend of mine, president of Houston Peace and Justice Center. Very important work being done by this organization. Let's have a little chat with Brother Reese. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Today we have a special guest, Jeff Reese. Jeff Reese is the president of the Houston Peace and Justice Center, a very important organization, activist organization here in Houston, Texas. Look, we talk about doing the local, the national, and the international. Well, today we have Jeff. Jeff, first of all, welcome to Politics Done Right. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Egberto. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, look, it's important because you know what? We do a whole lot of interviews with a whole lot of people that are doing a whole lot of good things. And we think that is the only way we're going to get that kind of a message out, to let people understand that this is how you make change, being active within the community, being active within organizations. Jeff, before we get started, I know you're president of HPJC, but I want to know who the hell is Jeff Reese first. So tell us a little bit about you by looking in that camera and telling us who you are.
Berto, you're scraping the bottom of the barrel when you got me on here, I'm afraid. I retired after 26 years with the Harris County Sheriff's Department, but I prepared for my law enforcement career by going to art school. I do psychedelic artwork, and so I have to paint under an alias, Solomon Kane, so I could put the initials SK, which stands for Soren Kierkegaard, the father of existentialism. He was a Danish philosopher and a big fan of his. So I have a kind of a mixed bag. I wound up as the president of the Houston Peace and Justice Center, not because I wanted to, but because basically nobody else would do it. And after I took the job, I found out why. So, but at the same time, there's nothing more important than peace and justice. It's the reason I became a police officer. Same thing. I don't feel that I've changed sides whatsoever. I taught mental health. I was formed the new mental health unit for the Harris County Sheriff's Department. I've been published nationally. I wrote on religion and mental illness and crisis intervention. I was a suicide counselor, amongst other things. And so it's kind of, for me, a natural fit for the Houston Peace and Justice Center. There's a peaceful way to solve problems. I think it takes a little effort, but it's worth the effort, Egberto, I think.
Well, it's great to hear that we have a police officer, a former police officer, that talks about mental issues, that talks about people in the state of committing suicide and that sort of thing. Because what we have right now is, all the issues we have with the police department. We can go into some of that later on. But the idea that we have somebody that says, I understand those particular issues are problematic in society and doesn't always require a gun as the solution, but likely being able to talk people down. So before we get into HPJC, tell me a little bit about that, because as we've seen in Rochester, New York, and a lot of other places, police officers have overreacted many times because maybe they didn't have your training. And what can we do about that?
Well, see, that's the issue. They have had the training, that they rejected the training, unfortunately. People that know violence, and that's the only way they know how to solve a problem, they resort to violence. That's the first thing they do. And too many police officers are taught a very militaristic way to police. A lot of times they actually recruit from ex-military. A lot of times these individuals have just come from Iraq or Afghanistan, and then you take them over here, you give them a gun and a badge, and already they look at everyone as being the enemy. And that's the problem. They see everyone as the enemy, and there's a camaraderie, peer pressure that most police officers have, and that's that thin blue line, you never cross it. And I stepped all over it in my career, so I'm maybe not the best person to tell you about that.
Well, I mean, you've been a cop, so, and I think you kind of opened the door as far as when you tell me that the police officers have a tendency to look at everybody as the enemy. While I take that on merit, I want to ask another question, and for you to answer on merit. It seems, however, that the enemy generally has a more colorful hue, if you know what I mean. Tell me, how have you seen that within the departments that you've worked, not necessarily your own, but the departments as a whole?
Yes, especially the one that I came from. And I did talk about systemic racism in law enforcement. You've got to realize back in the day, and it's still that way, it's a very controlled environment. They solicit from basically a high school area of level of education. Now they've created professionalism, calls for some college or college degrees, but a lot of times they recruit from Caucasian middle income areas. And these people have not had any interactions with anybody else but people that are like them. And people fear what's different, unfortunately. So when you put someone in that situation and then you train them that these people are the enemy, all right? That it's better to be tried by 12 than carried by 6. And no matter what happens at the end of your shift, you're going to go home, and you train these people. That's exactly what they're going out there with. Unfortunately, they don't realize, what about the other people out there that have families that want their loved one to come home also?
Now, I would give you that, but there's a special, that I think there's probably a good number of people that follow that scenario that you said. But when you look at what happened to George Floyd, that was a special kind of hate that wasn't, I feared for my life. Don't you think?
Oh, well, definitely. That whole thing, when that man looked at the camera, he knew he was being filmed, and he smiled while he allowed this man to die at his hands. That was emblematic, if you will, problematic of the whole situation. That summed it up. And that's why so many people protested, including myself, went out on the street and say, hey, wait, what do you do? What's going on here? Finally, this is the first time more people of lighter complexion stood with people of darker complexion when it finally sunk in the fact of what's really going on out there. And the problem is, you need to realize the man that did that was a training officer. He wasn't just any officer. He was a training officer who did what? He enabled people to be just like him. In fact, if you didn't act like him, you would be failed out. You'd be washed out of law enforcement if you didn't act like him. That was the norm, okay? And it reminds me, Egberto, there's a Chinese philosopher, I think it was Lunan, I can't remember his name, so don't quote me on the exact person. Back in the Middle Ages, they had this philosophy that we separate things that should never be separated. They had the viewpoint that the whole human race is one big family. They said the problem was some of us don't treat the others as family members. And that's the truth. Would you step on your brother's neck and cause him to die? If he was a cousin, a brother-in-law, a sister-in-law, what about your father and mother? These are the same people that are out there, but they've allowed us to separate things and view us as different. And it's kind of like the duopoly, if you will, when politics done right. We had Democrats and Republicans. But, I think the saying is both wings belong to the same bird. It's not about Republican and Democrat. It's not about conservative and liberal. It's not about black and white. It's about all of us together, And I think if you think of what Rodney King said, can't we all just get along? Isn't that sad?
Well, having a former police officer, police trainer, police manager, as now the president of HPJC, Houston Peace and Justice Center, I think that maybe you thought nobody else wanted the job. Maybe they just wanted an officer who had a heart and who could see things the way they should be seen. Up on, for at the helm for a while. So anyhow, tell me a little bit about what you do. First of all, tell me a little bit about what HPJC does, Houston Peace and Justice Center.
Well, the Houston Peace and Justice Center, I first came across Dave Atwood. I don't know if you know Dave. I think
yes,
Dave's on your show.
Very well.
Yes, he's a good man. I have an art studio, and he had come by my art studio when I was still a police officer, and I talked to Dave. So in the back of my mind, when I retired, I kind of knew what direction I was going to go into anyway. However, the Houston Peace and Justice Center is kind of like an amalgamation. It's a clearinghouse, supposedly, of all the peace activists. Their goal was, and Ted and I are working on this because, some of the mission statement and the vision statement needs to be modified to fit reality. And I think the goal of the Houston Peace and Justice Center was to be this clearinghouse, this great place where all the activists could come together and get information, where if we come together as one, we have power. As long as we're fragmented and disjointed, we don't have power, and that's what the system wants. It wants to keep us separated. They want us to keep viewing us as different. However, the Houston Peace and Justice Center, to me, is the one place where we're all one person. We're all one people. We're all together. Same goal.
Let me see if I get you right. That means that different organizations, irrespective of what they support, as long as they're supporting peace, justice, etc.,
yes,
they can come and meet together at the blogs that we have, the website that we have, set up events and all that sort of stuff so that it is shared among all these groups that have a common interest in whatever form, correct?
Exactly. We have a calendar of events on our website. Any organization that is peace and justice or anything that's related to peace and justice, you can come and post on our website. It will allow you, that's a gatekeeper, it's a WordPress site. I think you probably learned a little bit about that today, Egberto.
Right.
However, anybody can do that, and then it has to be approved, and then it's posted on our calendar of events, so anybody can get their event out there and get more publicity and more acknowledgement of what's going on in the peace and justice movement in Houston.
Now, this organization as well, I think it actually does things on its own. In other words, it has several major events throughout the year. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yes, and we're trying to expand upon that a little bit. Our big thing is our Peace Awards. It used to be a banquet. Last year it was a Zoom. But we pick a national award winner, and we pick local award winners. And we picked you, Egberto. I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago. for all your effort. You need to be recognized, and that was a long time coming, and we were happy to award you our local Peacemaker Award, and that was well deserved. And so that's what we do. We try to recognize people that are trying to strive for peace and justice, and so that's one aspect that we have. We also have working groups. All right, we have a Foreign and Military Alliance that Joe Marcinkowski heads up, and we have criminal justice, which Dave Atwood heads up. And that's also civil rights. We have economic justice. We have environmental justice. And we have Peace Camp. And this is where everything begins. If you train a child when they're young about peace and justice, when they grow up, they'll have a different perspective. And I think that's been sorely lacking here in America. We don't teach what we should teach our children. And my wife's a second grade school teacher, so I can tell you, they've taken civics out of the elementary schools. They've taken so many things out, and what they're teaching, they teach memorization. And the Chinese, going back to Lunan when he said that we separate things we shouldn't separate, they viewed the way we educated our children as a form of mental illness. We teach people to memorize. That's not educating them. All right. We used to teach rhetoric. We used to teach integrity and things in our school system that they're not really there. And we need to bring them back, I think. And so with Peace Camp, I think what we're trying to do is teach these kids you can resolve a situation non-violently. You don't have to shoot each other. You don't have to have road rage on the street where people pull over and kill each other. They shot a 9-year-old girl. And I think if that person stopped and asked them, hey, you really want to shoot a 9-year-old girl in the head?
Mm-hmm.
Of course not. But they're not thinking and they're acting out of anger. And going back to, I think his name was Lunan, he said this, he said, we separate things. He says, the problem is this, we look at life as different and separated. We look at death as a deviation and a long life as a norm. He says, but that's not true. It's, we're going to die. All right. We look at sickness as a deviation and health as a norm. But he says, you're going to be sick throughout life. There's going to be a time where you're going to be ill. All right. There's going to be a time where you're healthy. All this is intertwined. Life and death is intertwined. And he went on to say many different things. But basically this is that we separate things that we shouldn't separate. We have to look at each other as one big family. And this is a giant whole. And it is to our own benefit to make sure that our brothers and sisters are taken care of.
That is so true. A few weeks ago, I interviewed Helen Lee Bourges. She's a founder of the Reboot Foundation, and she said something similar. She said one of the things that we have lacking, why things like fake news is so prevalent now, is that we don't have critical thinking. And believe it or not, there's some intersectionality with what you just said, because what you just said is we're teaching our kids just to memorize tests, not to critically think things through. And if you don't critically think things through, if I tell you something about somebody, you just take it at face value. You don't try to evaluate why is it that we're not looking into the humanity of someone. So, I think you hit that nail on the head, my brother. I think you hit that nail on the head. Now, how long have you been president of the HPJC?
Well, I'm in my third year now, and I'm term limited, so we need to find a replacement for me, thank God. It's time for a change, and the bylaws are written in such a way, which is a good thing, that the positions have a 3-year, at least the presidency does, a limitation, and it's time for someone else to step in and do the job.
Well, you've been doing a great job, and if the bylaws say something, it says something, and I guess you're already. I notice you're already prepping folks to come and take over the reins.
Yes. Yes, I am.
But that is good. So what's in your future after you're done in December?
Well, you never, peace and justice, it's something that's constant until you die. You're going to keep working for it. If you're really dedicated. So that's never going to change. But I guess, I don't know. I don't know that I'll be alive tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen. I think we're so afraid of death that we don't live. And so every day is a great day. I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow. I can't tell you what I'm going to do next year. I might not be here. Who knows? Eventually I won't be here. We all have to go to that and transition to that next existence. So,
well, I am pretty sure, Jeff, you're going to be here for quite some time. I'm pretty sure when you leave the presidency of the Houston Peace and Justice Center, that you'll be right there with the Houston Peace and Justice Center doing what you've always done, which is being a part of Houston, not only Houston, being a part of peace and justice throughout the country. So, Jeff, this is a question I ask everybody at the end of an interview. What would you have liked me to ask you that I didn't?
You know, that's the $1,000,000 question. I listen to your show all the time, Egberto, and I hear you ask that of everyone, and I'm thinking, you know, I just never thought I would be in that position to be asked that question. But since you ask it, you know, I don't know. That's a really good that's a good question. You know, there's no the thing is there's no bad questions, and so I don't know. I'm it's
Well,
kind of
you know, that's good. I mean, if you say you don't know, I feel kind of good. That means I asked you quite a bit of questions, and you know, so hey, look, let me tell you, Jeff, please keep doing what you're doing because I think society needs good people doing good things, and if what you're doing is a net positive for society, then society gets better. So thank you so kindly for having been on Politics, and you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Jeff Reese, real good guy. Enjoyed talking to Jeff. Jeff, absolutely. So, anyway, folks, let's go ahead and start talking. Bridge MC P says, being a teacher retired. You're right. That's outside the box. I taught logic. Yeah, you know, a lot of people lately have been talking about critical thinking. Critical thinking. One of the problems we have in the country, democracy is not an easy system. Democracy is not an easy system unless the vast majority, you know how they talk about herd immunity? You have to have herd immunity to all other systems but democracy and understand it for it to really work. So democracy requires, and you won't hear people talk about this a lot, but it requires a fairly intelligent population. And intelligent, I don't mean knowing that E is equal to MC square or that MC delta T is equal to MC delta T. I don't mean you have to know all those engineering formulas, those physics formulas or anything like that. What I do mean is that you have to be aware of civics, you have to be aware of things. And what I mean is as follows. You could have let's say the population is fairly hungry. But the population could still get by with 90% of the food production. But people are still hungry after consuming 90% of the food production. A democracy wouldn't mind if we voted and understood that no matter what, we have to keep back 10% of the seeds or whatever for planting for the next scenario, for the next harvest. But another society may say, oh, no, there are 10% more. We can be 10% fuller. Let's use all the beans. And then you don't have anything for going subsequently. And what I mean is that the majority could vote to use all those seeds in an uneducated democracy. In an educated democracy, the majority would know to vote for the folks who would have made that good decision, and we all live to see another day. We're reaching to the point now with an uneducated population. And by uneducated, I don't mean that these people are not engineers or these people are not lawyers or these people are not doctors. I'm talking again about people that are uneducated civically to actually see the outcomes of things if they maintain the status quo or maintain the way things are. We had 74 million people who voted for Donald Trump. 74 million Americans, a lot of doctors, lawyers, engineers, business people, all of those people voted for him. But what does that mean? A lot of them would do fine, but most won't. But what have they done if he had won? What would have happened if he had won? What would have been the international damage? What would have been the local damage? What would have been the damage to the environment? What would have been all these critical places that affect us because we are not critical thinkers, because too many, 74 million, thought with something other than critical thinking. I just want that conservative to win. I'm a conservative. I'm an ideologue. I'm going to tell you something. I won't tell you who right now, but if you read some of my books, you'll know who. I voted all parties. I voted Green Party. I voted Republican Party, and I voted Democratic Party, and I've included voted Republican Party in substantive issues. Again, critical thinking. Critical thinking. I am a left-wing progressive Democrat. But there are certain types of policies, or if somebody has a particular policy, or I think they can get it over the hood, I am going to vote in the best interest of us all, not in the best interest of my ideological feelings, how I feel things should be. Eric says, so are you saying all those people, all those are not smart and should think like you? No, it's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is they were not critically thinking, because another Trump administration, based on what he has done, based on what he stands for, would have been catastrophic for this country, not only for locally, but internationally. And many of those who voted for him knew that. Many of those who voted for him knew that, but they will be okay. But the vast majority of those who voted for him will not be okay if he had won. Critical thinking. Critical thinking. It's not about not everyone wants the same thing. It's about whether everybody wants to be around, whether everybody wants to ensure that there are others that good is done for, that the others can live as well. And that is one of the most difficult things to teach folks, because everybody wants to take it personally. Look, why do I talk to people irrespective of their ideology, irrespective of their political inclinations? Not only just to throw what I believe on them, because what I believe on is pretty deep, but also for them to be a part of the discussion. When you get to part of the discussion, then you get a chance. If you keep your mind open enough for critical thinking, then you can understand where things are coming from. Reese says, many Republicans like Trump, but are not nuts. But they should have learned as he went along there was something wrong with him. Exactly, Reese. Exactly. And those Republicans who've left the fold, those Republicans who are now talking about creating a new party, those Republicans who said, for this country, I am going to be a Democrat. I'm not for now. When you have Steve Smith, McCain's guy, come across and say, to maintain democracy in America, I must be a Democrat. There is only one party supporting democracy right now. It's not that Steve Smith is a Democrat. It's that Steve Smith loves country more than he loves party. It's that Steve Smith loves country more than he loves ideology. But I'm going to put it a little bit deeper. It is that Steve Smith loves humanity better than he loves ideology or anything else. Paul Fleming says, I've taught my children to be critical thinkers, and boy, do we have great debates. That is what it's all about. That's why people sometimes say, well, people come on to our show, Paul, this is all our shows here, and you'll have somebody that's talking something that sounds so different, and we're saying, people say, get him out of here. He's not one of us. He is one of us. Everybody in this show is one of us, or one of us, or one of us. Because we're in the same country. And as Jeff Reese said, Jeff himself said it, we have to think of each other as really a family. Some people, when I say, hey, brother Ledo, I don't see him here in a couple of days. And he says, don't call me brother. No, I do that not only for him, but I do it for me. I can't hurt my brother. I can't hurt my sister. I can't hurt my cousin. So if I look at you not just as that stranger, if I look at you as part of my family, then I can't hurt you. And I only want what's best for you. And that is where we stand. That is where I stand. Because I think if we can get this form of thinking, critical thinking, across to most people. And I'm not asking people to come out and say, oh, I've seen the light. I'm now reformed. That's not how reforming behaves or occur at all. That's not how it occurs at all. Reform, your own personal reform, your own personal change comes in stages. And if there's somebody else helping you, it takes you first having trust in them. And that's what I try to do with my audience. My first goal here is to develop a level of trust. In other words, that you guys know I'm not some charlatan trying to make a buck doing this stuff. I'm trying to make a buck to survive so I can do this stuff. Big difference. You have people that are in this business to try to make a buck. I was in this business before making a buck. I was in this business while I was doing Willie's Computer Software Company, and you can look the company up if you want. But then, the only way I could do this business right, do what we want to do right, was to become doing this full time. Had to make a big adjustment to life. Okay, folks, please go ahead and get my book. It's worth it. How to talk to your right-wing relatives, friends, and neighbors. And you can get it at the Amazon link there, or you can go ahead and get it at our store. Please go ahead and click the join button if you are on YouTube and become a part of our PDR posse. Become a part of our PDR posse. Ask Bridge MCP. She was one of our first members. As soon as we started the posse, she was there. And Norman Reynolds as well, and Rudnin, and all these great people. You can also support us via PayPal, politicsdoneright.com/PayPal, or become a Patreon, politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. If you're not on YouTube right now, you can go ahead and become a part of our YouTube posse by going to politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. Folks, thank you so kindly for being here. Thank you so kindly for listening to the show. I ask you so kindly to share the show. That is how we get more bang for the buck. That's how we go from 500 people watching over 1 hour to 5,000 people watching over 3 days. It's you who get it done for us. Couldn't do this without you. Appreciate you, my liberals, my progressives, my conservatives, my right-wingers, my anarchists. I have a couple of anarchists in here as well. Thank you for being here. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out! We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number 1, subscribe to our channel, and number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.